It is 6 o'clock, so we will call to order the meeting of the City of Helena Zoning Commission for December 10th, 2024. We will start with roll call. Chair Harbage is absent. Nicole Anderson is absent. Betsy Story? Here. Alyssa Sorensen?
Here.
Mark Roylance? And Mark Rundy?
Present.
We have 4 members in attendance. As Chair Harbage is absent and we lack a vice chair at this time, we will ask the members of the commission to nominate an acting chair.
I guess since I've been here the longest and I'm in person, I'll nominate myself. I second that.
Okay, so we have a second from Mark Roylance. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Acting Chair Story, if you'd like to proceed with the minutes.
Sure. So I believe the minutes were posted online. Are there any changes to the minutes? Okay, seeing no changes to the minutes, I believe the minutes can just be approved as is without a motion.
That can be fine.
Okay. And do you have the sheet that has the formal language?
I do, and I
Opening.
can bring it over to you.
All right. My apologies. So the meeting has been called to order. We just passed the minutes from the previous meeting. Welcome to the Helena City Zoning Commission. The date is December 10th, 2024. This meeting is being recorded, and we will start in the order of the items listed on the agenda. Item 1 pertaining to the zone change and item 2 pertaining to the conditional use permit. And how we start these is city staff will present first, and then there will be questions from the board for city staff. And then after that, we'll open it up for public comment as to this item. And then we'll make a motion on the item, and then we'll move on to the second one, follow the same procedure. And then we'll open it up generally to public comment about any other issues unrelated to these 2 items that we just heard. So we can start with the first item pertaining to the proposed zone changes.
Thank you, Acting Chair Story. Item 1 tonight is a zone change at Mountain View Meadows, the Peaks Phase 1 of the Crossroads at Mountain View Meadows. And this is a zone change from R2 to RU, R2 to R4, B2 to RU, and B2 to R4. So a few moving pieces here. This is concerning quite a few parcels, so we're just going to read them off here. Specifically, this is going to be to make a recommendation on an ordinance amending City of Helena Ordinance number 3097 and the official zoning map for the City of Helena that changes the zoning district from R2 residential to RU residential urban for the property legally described as lots 6 and 18 to 25 in block 26, lots 1 through 3, 4A, 5A, 6 through 9 in block 48, lots 1 through 9 in block 49, lots 1 and 2 in block 50, lots 1 through 17 in block 51, lots 1 through 4 in block 54, and lots 1 through 7 in block 55. That changes the zoning district from R2 residential to R4 residential office for the property legally described as lots 1 and 2 in block 53. That further changes the zoning district from B2 commercial to RU residential urban for the property legally described as lots 16 through 26 in block 28, and changes the zoning district from B2 commercial and R2 residential to R4 residential office for the property legally described as lots 1 and 2 in block 52 of the Peaks Phase 1 of the Crossroads at Mountain View Meadows subdivision in the city of Helena, Lewis and Clark County, Montana. Just as a special note here, next month the Zoning Commission will hear an application for a zone change for adjacent properties north along, in the same area, north along War Eagle. Lot 5 in Block 26, which was originally included in this application, will be heard at that time. So the property is generally located in the Peaks Phase 1 of the Crossroads at Mountain View Meadows and is generally located along Peaks Edge Street from and including Cayuse Avenue to War Eagle Street, along Peaks Ave from War Eagle Street to Runkle Parkway, and including Lone Chief Loop, Lone Chief Street as currently annexed, Crow Peak Avenue, and Mount Baldy Street as currently annexed. The subject property currently has RU residential urban, R2 residential, and B2 commercial zoning. The RU being in Lot 5 up there in Block 26. So the applicant is seeking a zone change to RU residential urban and R4 residential office. Neither zoning is out of alignment with the zoning of the area, as there are adjacent properties with both zoning types. The intent of the RU zoning is to allow for dimensional relief from setback requirements while developing for single and 2 dwelling unit residences. For residential urban, multifamily is not permitted. The intent of the 4 R4 tracts are to build multiple dwelling units for 3 or more units on those 4 parcels there located with that sort of loop road around them. I'm noticing up on the screen, this isn't coming through in color. Is it color on your screens? Okay, weird. So the R2 residential districts, just some definitions here and growth policy area designations. The R2 residential district provides for residential dwellings and limited non-residential development that protects and enhances the residential nature of the area. That's the predominant zoning as currently zoned. The B2 general commercial, which is currently in the area, district provides for compatible residential uses and a broad range of commercial and service uses that serve large areas of the city and that are normally required to sustain a community. This is our heaviest commercial, our most retail oriented and generally used commercial district throughout the city outside of the downtown. The R4 residential office districts provide for a compatible mix of higher density residential development with professional and business offices and associated service uses. The RU residential urban districts provide for standalone single or duplex structures and a compatible mix of professional and business offices and associated service uses. On the future land use map in the 2019 growth policy, this area is designated as urban, and that is defined as this category is including predominantly moderate to high density residential uses and may include public uses such as schools, churches, and open lands such as parks, and occasional commercial uses that serve the immediate area or are relatively small and low intensity. Within the county, this category includes areas closer to the city, areas with few development constraints, areas that may be currently developed or could be redeveloped at higher densities, and may include a variety of uses, including commercial and light industrial. So a fairly broad category, but predominantly high density residential. The future land use map designates, just to break it out, since there were a lot of definitions and a lot going on the previous page, here's a separate map just with the future land use map on it, so you can see the area. These parcels aren't really defined yet in cadastral. They were recently replatted earlier this year, and it just hasn't updated on the state's website. They are correct on Google, though. MCA 762304 gives the criteria and guidelines for zoning regulations. The first is that zoning regulations must be A, made in accordance with a growth policy, and B, designed to secure safety from fire and other dangers, promote public health, public safety, and the general welfare, and facilitate the adequate provision of transportation, water, sewerage, schools, parks, and other public requirements. In the adoption of zoning regulations, the municipal governing body shall consider reasonable provision of adequate light and air, the effect on motorized and non-motorized transportation systems, promotion of compatible urban growth, the character of the district and its peculiar suitability for particular uses, and conserving the value of buildings and encouraging the most appropriate use of land throughout the jurisdictional area. The 2019 City of Helena Growth Policy, with that urban designation, defines in part as predominantly moderate to high density residential uses. The allowable uses, potential scale and car-oriented nature of the B2 commercial zoning in this area would not necessarily be considered complementary to the urban future land use designation. So that's the existing zoning there with the B2. The R2 residential zone type is frequently featured in areas designated as urban throughout the city. However, for those areas, that urban designation is frequently pointed to as encouraging upzoning. RU residential urban and R4 residential office are higher density residential zone types that the city has been applied for here. The entirety of the area has curb, gutter, and boulevard sidewalks per City of Helena engineering standards. The Community Development Department calculates estimated trips generated by zone type based on a theoretical mix of uses that includes high, medium, and low trip generating uses. I go into much more detail in the staff report. But the current zoning is expected to generate 6,113.2 trips per day, and the proposed zoning is expected to generate 3,685.1 trips per day. Basically, that scale is heavily tilted by that B2 zone and the fact that you could put in a drive-through restaurant there. That being said, I did downsize the scale of that drive-through restaurant that could potentially be built in this area to better reflect what could feasibly be built with parking and landscaping options sort of built into it, but it still weighed the scale pretty heavily. B2 creates a lot of trips. So fire, building, transportation, engineering, utility, all approved. There was some back and forth with transportation, working out the numbers. But like I said, the staff report offers more detail about expected trip generation from this zone change. And this should be a lowering of the total trips generated significantly. The proposed zone change aligns with several goals and objectives in the city's growth policy. Goal 2 is to support the provision of housing that is safe, available, accessible, and affordable for all Helena residents. Goal 10, which is to plan for and establish types and quantities of land uses in Helena supporting community needs, neighborhood centers, aesthetics, and the city's long-term sustainability. Objective 12, which is to promote and maintain development of a diverse housing stock, helping to minimize depletion of natural resources, reduce land consumption and demands on the physical environment, provide housing options for all residents, optimize infrastructure use, prepare Helena to meet emerging needs. Objective 77, which is to apply or revise zoning designations with careful consideration of factors including the future land use mapping, compatibility with surrounding land uses, infrastructure and service plans, development of vacant and underutilized buildings, existing and future traffic patterns, and the goals and objectives of the growth policy related master plan and or facility plans. So for zoning compatibility, the proposed zone changes to RU residential urban and R4 residential office will increase consistency with adjacent properties. The removal of B2 commercial zoning in the area will reinforce the residential urban character in the area. And the proposed zoning is not expected to create detrimental impacts to the surrounding properties because these zone types already exist adjacent to the subject property and affords for similar uses found in the vicinity. This zoning commission was legally noticed in the Helena Independent, this hearing rather, was noticed in the Helena Independent Record on November 23rd. Neighbor notices were sent to property owners within 100 feet on the 22nd. Notice sign was placed on the northeast corner of Peaks Avenue and War Eagle Street, as noted in my site visit picture here. And no comments have been received regarding this zone change, although I have had conversations, with Mr. Sloan, who's in attendance today, and I imagine will be making comment. The city recommends approval of an ordinance amending City of Helena Ordinance number 3097 and the official zoning map for the City of Helena that changes the zoning district from R2 residential to RU residential urban, R2 residential to R4 residential office, B2 commercial to RU residential urban, and B2 commercial and R2 residential and R2 residential to R4 residential office for the properties as previously described in this presentation. And I will happily take your questions.
Are there any questions from the board for Mr. Alvarez? Okay, seeing none, we can invite the applicant up to speak if the applicant is here. All right, thank you for coming. If you could introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Good evening, members of the Zoning Commission. My name is Greg Worth, W-I-R-T-H. I'm with Staley Engineering at 3530 Centennial Drive here on behalf of Mountain View Meadows. And I'd like to thank Mr. Alvarez for preparing the staff report. I have no other further comments. Mr. Alvarez was very extensive and on the staff report and covered everything very well, so I have nothing further to add. Just that we reviewed the staff report, concur with the analysis, and would greatly appreciate your recommendation for approval with this zone change. I'm available to answer any questions, and also available in attendance is from Mountain View Meadows, Mr. Mark Runkle, the developer, and Ms. Rebecca Ryland, the Director of Design. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Worth?
Are there any sort of covenants or restrictions for uses for these properties?
There are covenants on the property. There's single family HOA and covenants that mainly deal with appearance type of the structures, architectural standards.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing no further questions, thank you for being here, and we'll open it up to public comment on this proposed item for the zone changes described by Mr. Alvarez. Is there anyone in the room that wishes to provide public comment on this item? All right, thank you, sir. And if you could introduce yourself and state your address for the record before you give your comment, we would appreciate it.
Yes, Dick Sloan, living at 335 Donna Street. And that's in the upland, not quite sure whether they're called subdivisions, but in the uplands area, which is immediately north of the proposed area for these zoning changes. A couple of general questions. I know it's been stated in several of the presentations that the zoning changes, number one, are consistent with the property or consistent with the development. And that certainly may be the case, but the fact that the zoning changes in this particular group of zoning changes, but the zoning changes over the last few years have been what I would call pretty sporadic and focused on individual areas. For example, the changes in areas, I believe it was 8, 9, and 10, were focused on R2 to R4. And now these changes are focused on, as I understand it, mainly, R2 to RU, and I think some of them are R2 to R4, all of which tend to decrease property values versus, for example, single-family housing on, say, a quarter of an acre to half an acre, because now we're talking about a real random distribution of zoning across residential areas. And I know some realtors that I've talked with in the area have a concern that that this development, which started out as, and I know you're not probably supposed to use the phrase upscale single-family development area, has deteriorated quite significantly over the last number of years. And the comment about these proposed zoning changes are consistent with the Helena policy of increasing affordable housing. And I think it's important to understand in the Helena area right now, there are a number of major efforts to increase affordable housing. The roughly 600 apartment complex going in down by, I think it's just in the area of the Chef store. There's another one scheduled for, I believe it's about 600 units immediately south of that. I believe there's currently, I think, 9 apartment buildings currently under construction between Blue Cross Blue Shield and Highway 12. And there is another roughly 1,500 residential effort going on roughly 2 or 3 miles to the east, of this proposal. So the argument that we need to do this kind of hopscotch approach to generate affordable housing really is just not a defense for this development. And another concern was they mentioned that, and let me just get my right note here, is the street network in the Mountain View Meadows provides a non-motorized connection to the Centennial Trail. And I do have an interest in that other than a resident being up there, simply because I am on the Helena Metropolitan Commission focusing on non-motorized travel opportunities. And I had a little trouble figuring out how they're going to get this particular part of the subdivision tied into the Centennial Trail. That certainly may be possible, but it certainly does not show up in the application. And just another comment too, for example, when you look at the uplands, and I realize that's not an issue here tonight, when we bought in there 3 years ago, our understanding is that was clearly R2, and now it appears that that's RU, because one of the concerns is how do these zoning changes happen kind of willy-nilly? And I'd certainly, if there's any questions or comments, I've reviewed the applications. And I have concerns, for example, that RU, for example, allows for 0 lot line setbacks. And when you think about that in terms of a development area, and whether you're looking at this one or the uplands, 0 lot line setbacks just opens up all sorts of opportunities for nilly-willy development of a great subdivision. And that's kind of the gist of my comments. I have a lot of detailed ones, but those are really the gist. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to provide public comment on this item? All right, thank you. If you could come up to the podium and introduce yourself and state your address before you provide your comment, we would appreciate it.
My name is Rodetta Sloan. I'm the wife of previous speaker, also at 335 Donna Street. My concern is the amount of traffic that this development will generate through our immediate subdivision, through Uplands. They have to go through Uplands right at the edge of it to get to War Eagle Street, or Avenue, whatever they're calling it, and then to continue on up the hill to this subdivision. And I know the numbers that were presented are not the actual numbers, but I did see other numbers in your application that said approximately 200 vehicles a day. And 200 vehicles a day through our little subdivision is a lot. And a lot of people walk their dogs. They take their dogs to the open land to let them off the leash and run, or just to walk along that street that's not very busy. Another 200 cars a day will definitely impact our section of the subdivision. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to provide public comment on this issue? Okay, seeing none. Is there anybody online?
If you are online and you would like to make public comment about this item, please raise your hand now. I have no hands raised, Chair Story.
Okay, we'll let the record reflect that there's nobody online that was wishing to provide comment on this issue, so we'll open it up to discussion among the board. Does anyone wish to start us off? Okay. Can I ask some questions of you, Mr. Alvarez, about the application? Okay. So under this proposed zone change, it appears that the status quo is R2 and B2 for these lots. Is that right?
Yes, Acting Chair.
Okay. And has this been changed? Has the zoning for these lots been changed before?
Thank you, Chair and Commission. No, the plat has changed, and I should have perhaps highlighted that more in my presentation or at all. Basically, the street layout has changed, and some of these zoning districts no longer actually line up with these homes, or with the zoning districts. Zoning districts now, some of them cut through some of the parcels. Beyond that, just some of the layout there. It's my understanding that the main reason to go from R2 to RU is for some of relief of the dimensional standards and some of the setbacks. So that's one side of RU. The other side of RU is that multifamily and things that really jack up sort of the density rates are not permitted, whereas in R2 they would be permitted with a conditional use permit. So it's because of the absence of the dimensional or because of the absence of the dimensional standards, RU can be a pretty high density district, but you would need to have pretty small lot sizes in order to do that. They're not changing the lot sizes from the R2 to RU. It's doesn't really change the total number of units that can be built here. If anything, it possibly puts a cap on it because nobody can come down later on with a CUP for an additional unit on their property.
Okay. I'll ask a follow-up question then. So the way that it has been replatted and the lots are configured now under the plat that they just received, is it likely that they would come back for conditional use permits later to try and achieve the same outcome for building out this subdivision?
Thank you, Chair and Commission. I'm sorry, I do need to clarify, what type of CUP do you think they would be applying for here? There are more uses that are allowed in an RU. Than in R2. There's, you know, it's much easier to open, you know, convert a home into like a law office or something like that in that district, which is sort of the intent.
Gotcha. I think you answered my question. I just asked it kind of poorly. Is there any other discussion or questions from the committee?
Ms. Sorensen has a question.
Great.
Yes, Michael, I just wanted to clarify, isn't the intent of RU to, the reason we put that in place was to try to create the possibility of having kind of the single-owned town home style builds? Am I remembering that correctly?
Thank you, Chair and Commission. That's correct. That was perceived as one of the major product types that would be offered in RU zoning. I would say for specific building type questions, though, I would probably defer to the applicant.
I think my question is more to the intent of that zoning district. I'm curious if the way we've created it has not actually lended to that and instead just made it a residential zone where setbacks aren't required, which I don't think was the intent. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of get some clarification on that.
Thank you, Chair and Commission. Yeah, I mean, I do think the basic trade between RU and R4 is capping the total number of units that can be developed, but allowing those units that are developed to be built closer to their property lines. And I think that's what we'll see being built here. So I'm not sure that this is just because there's not necessarily a row of townhomes going in. I don't think this is any different than necessarily than the intent of the district. So I don't, not entirely sure how to respond. I do think this allows buildings to be set closer together, and they will be.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the commission? Okay. If there aren't any more comments or questions, now would be the time to make a motion on the zone change. Can we pull up that recommendation language so we can see that? Okay. Is anyone willing to make a motion on this item? And if you do make a motion, I believe the entire paragraph needs to be read out for the record.
That is correct.
Unfortunately, I can't really read it the way it's on the screen, so if someone else would do that.
Approve the ordinance amending City of Helena Ordinance number 3097
and the official zoning map for the city of Helena that changes the zoning district from R2 residential to RU residential urban for the property legally described as lots 6 and 18 through 25 in block 26, lots 1 through 3, 4A, 5A, 6 through 9 in block 48, lots 1 through 9 in block 49, lots 1 and 2 in block 50, lots 1 through 17 in block 51, lots 1 through 4 in block 54, lots 1 through 7 in block 55. Changes the zoning district from R2 residential to R4 residential office for the property legally described as lots 1 through 2 in block 53. Changes the zoning district from B2 commercial to RU residential urban for the property legally described as lots 16 through 26 in block 28. And changes the zoning district from B2 commercial and R2 residential to R4 residential office for the property legally described as lots 1 through 2 in block 52 of the Peaks phase of the Crossroads at Mountain View Meadows subdivision in the city of Helena, Lewis and Clark County, Montana.
A second,
Is there a second on the motion?
second here for me.
Just a minute, Ms. Sorensen, I have to switch over screens. Go ahead.
Oh, I just was trying to give a second. I didn't realize you all couldn't hear me.
All right, it sounds like Commissioner Sorensen has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion prior to a vote?
If I'm still up, I just wanted to say, I do think that by skewing more residential in this area, that it will probably be a better fit than the B2. So I do like to see the mix of B2. I also think having, especially in new construction areas, that built-in mixture of density is really positive for providing a diverse pool of different types of property. And so that's why I will be voting in favor.
Any further discussion prior to a vote? Okay, I guess we'll move right into the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Right, so the motion has been approved by the commission. And then this will go forward to the,
Sorry, Commissioner,
yeah,
did you vote?
am I supposed to vote if I'm the acting chair?
Yes.
Okay, then I also vote in favor of the motion. My apologies for that. I am new at this. I've never done it. But, okay, so it's been approved and this will go before the city sometime in the future. Is that correct?
Thank you, Chair and Commission. The item will go up, will be introduced to the City Commission next month, and the public hearing will be held in February. I apologize for not having those dates in front of me, but they'll both be on there the first meeting of the month for both of them. January 13th for the meeting and the public hearing. I believe it's the 12th.
Okay. And Ken,
February 10th. Sorry.
It's January, 13th. You've got that right.
and the public can provide comments at both of those meetings on this issue. Is that right?
Thank you, Chair and Commission. Absolutely.
Okay, great. So that will be heard in the future, and we encourage you to speak before the City Commission if you are not happy with the way that the Zoning Commission has voted on that item. So we'll move forward on to item number 2 pertaining to the conditional use permit. If the city staff could present that for us, that'd be great.
Good evening, Zoning Commission. My name is Kyle Holland. I'm a planner with the City of Helena Community Development Department. Tonight, I have for you consideration of a resolution granting a conditional use permit to allow a contractor yard use in a B2 zoning district for a property legally described as Lots 9, 10, 11, and 12 in Block 22 of the Grand Avenue addition to the City of Helena, Lewis and Clark County, Montana, as shown on the certificate of survey filed under document number 3004235. This property is addressed as 1126 Poplar Street. This is on the north side of Poplar, to the west of Montana Avenue by about a half a block. Immediately on the west side of it is the abandoned but not vacated Dodge Avenue. National Avenue is further to the west. The property is currently vacant. The City of Helena Code defines contractor yard as a place for the storage of construction material, machinery, or repair, including trucks and heavy equipment, shops, and office space. And it defines the B2 zoning district as providing for compatible residential uses and a broad range of commercial and service uses that serve large areas of the city. Our 2019 growth policy designates this area as commercial, which are lands where the predominant use is the transaction of goods or services such as retail, office, restaurants, entertainment, and that are near arterials and have good access to major streets. The applicant intends to construct a contractor yard for a telecom provider. No structure will be built on site at this time. They intend to use Connex-style storage when required. New fencing will be installed along the north and east sides of the property. The south and west are currently fenced. A new gate will be installed with the intended location being on the southwest there along the abandoned Dodge Avenue. An alternate location is shown on the map as well in the northeast corner. New electrical service will be run to the site for equipment, but no other utilities are intended at this time. Hours of operation will be Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Equipment is expected to include employee vehicles, bucket trucks, equipment trailers, telecommunication reels, and utility pedestals. Here are two images provided by the applicant showing the size of the trucks and trailers that they use. And here are two images showing the site, the upper one looking northeast and the lower one looking northwest. To the west of the site is the building that contains Little Caesars and the UPS store. Immediately west and a little bit further is the Ascent Bank and Napa Auto Parts. To the north of the site is the Headwaters Brew House. South of the site is a plumbing contractor and a auto glass shop. And then southwest of the site is the Helena Public Television or Community Television in the MAPS program. Here is the certificate of survey showing the portion being used. Helena City Code defines the conditional use permit review criteria in Title 11, Chapter 3. A conditional use permit may be granted by the City Commission only upon findings supported by substantial, credible evidence in the record that the following standards are met. The proposed conditional use as conditioned will not adversely impact public health, safety, or general welfare, and the proposed conditional use as conditioned will not adversely impact the peaceful use of existing property or improvements in the vicinity in the zoning district in which it is located. In considering whether Section 1134A1 and A2 standards are met, the following factors must be considered in determining the impacts of the proposed conditional use. Location, character, and natural features of the subject property as it currently exists, type and size of the proposed structure and improvements in their relative location on the subject property, historical uses, established use patterns, and recent changes in the neighborhood, conformity of the proposed use with the neighborhood plan, current and proposed pedestrian, vehicular, and bicycle traffic, including ingress and egress, whether the use is consistent with the Helena Climate Change Action Plan, whether the proposal meets the zoning dimensional standard requirements for the zoning district without need for a variance, hours of operation, noise, glare, odor, and express public opinion related to those factors. The above factors are weighted and evaluated depending on the circumstances of the case. Any one factor may be sufficient to find adverse impacts for the purposes of 11.3 for A1 and A2 and justify denial of the permit or placement of conditions. Findings by city staff are that the expected hours of operations will be 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday, which is in line with surrounding businesses. The project will support the following goals and objectives of the growth policy. Goal 1, it will promote and sustain Helena's economic vitality by supporting existing businesses. Goal 6, it will protect and enhance the quality of Helena's natural environment, conserving resources for the benefit of present and future generations by reutilizing existing developed land. And objectives 78 and 86, encouraging infill development on vacant and underutilized land within the city, directing growth towards areas that are already established with infrastructure, and promoting the redevelopment of vacant or underutilized properties with a mix of uses. Based on the applicant's statement of the anticipated 12 employees using the site, the Institute of Traffic Engineers Handbook gives us an estimate of between 18.36 and 53.52 trips per day, with an average of 36.24, which is below the threshold to require a traffic impact study. No changes are to be made to the existing lighting, so impacts to glare are expected to be minimal. There are currently dumpsters located in the former Dodge Avenue, and there's no activities proposed at the site that would increase adverse odors. Department reviews. Transportation recommended that a condition of the CUP should be installation of sidewalk along Poplar Street. This would be to increase the safety of pedestrians traveling along Poplar. The fire department stated that all work is subject to field verification and must meet the 2021 International Fire Code. Building stated there's no buildings at this time. Engineering had no comment. Utility stated there will be no impacts to water and sewer, and the police department did not provide a review. This meeting was legally noticed in the independent record on November 23rd. Neighbor notices were sent to property owners within 150 feet on the 21st, along with a sign placed on the Poplar Street frontage on that date. As of today, no comments have been received. We have received a couple of phone calls for additional information, and one of those callers is here in attendance tonight. It is city's recommendation to move to recommend approval of a resolution granting a conditional use permit to allow a contractor yard in a B2 zoning district for the property legally described as lots 9, 10, 11, and 12 in Block 22 of the Grand Avenue addition to the City of Helena, Lewis and Clark County, Montana, as shown on the certificate of survey filed under document number 3004235. I thank you, Commission, for your time. And are there any questions for city staff at this moment?
Are there any questions?
Just so to be, so it's clear to me, so the addition of a sidewalk along the south side is part of, if we recommend the approval, if we approve this resolution, that is included as part of that.
Thank you, Commission. That is up to the Commission's discretion as to whether you would like to condition the recommendation as such.
Thank you.
And to do that, we would put that in the motion.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions for city staff?
How common is it to require sidewalks for, I guess, conditional use permits?
Thank you, Commission, for your question. Typically, there is a future building permit associated with a conditional use permit, and that becomes a condition of that approval. A conditional use permit without a proposed permanent structure is uncommon, but not unheard of, and it would not be unheard of for the commission to choose to condition this to mitigate that impact.
Are there sidewalks on the other side of the street of Poplar?
Yes, on the south side of Poplar, as you can see, there are sidewalks and drop curb there. They're not fully established along that glass place, but you can see them just to the west of Dodge Avenue. There is built. Here in the overhead, you can see kind of where sidewalks are located in the vicinity.
Any other questions for city staff? Okay, seeing none, I guess we will open it up for the applicant. Is the applicant in the room with us?
The applicant is online.
Okay,
Thank you,
Yeah.
Commissioner.
Can you hear me? This is Jack Isbell.
Yes, Jack, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you for having me today. Thank you, Mr. Holland, for going over the proposed CUP. I don't have much to add other than, I guess, in terms of additional sidewalks, I guess I would request to postpone any kind of sidewalk until a building permit is issued and a permanent structure at a later time. Other than that, I don't have any other comments.
are there any questions from the commission for the applicant?
Do you anticipate that this is going to be not the long-term use of this lot, that eventually it will be developed? Is that something that you anticipate doing, or is this
Yes,
sort
sorry, Commission. We did look into the prospects of building a shop on this location and determined that it wasn't financially viable at this time. So this is hopefully a stopgap in that process to develop this property at a later time. Yeah, so I do expect at some point we will hopefully develop it.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, seeing none. Well, thank you, Mr. Isbell, for being here tonight. We'll open it up to public comment on this item. Is there anyone in the room wishing to provide public comment on the conditional use permit application? Right. Thank you. And if you could state your name and your address for the record, we would appreciate it.
My name is Arlette Randash. My husband Dean and I own the property immediately to the west, the UPS Little Caesar building. And we're really glad that this is being proposed. We think it's good, but there are a couple of questions. I'm hoping that the gentleman who spoke to us could maybe answer them. When I saw, and it could be that the picture sort of distorted the size of the trailers that we're going to be hauling things in and out of there. Will they be able to come out the southwest
corner of that lot where you're proposing to put a gate in, will they be able to turn that corner sharp enough to stay on Dodge Avenue? Or will they be crossing our property behind the UPS Little Caesar building towards Napa to get out of that area? That's my question to the gentleman who owns the property and is seeking this conditional use.
I think according to the procedure, the public can't ask directions or
Okay.
questions directly of.
But I could ask you and you could
Yes.
ask him.
We can do that.
Could I direct that question to you, please?
Yes.
Chair Story, okay. And I have a couple others. Could I ask them? I would assume that either the traffic within this, with this telecom person who's going to be using this, I would assume he would knock the weeds down in the lot, or will they be removed prior to them bringing in equipment? If you would direct that question to him, that would be nice. It's going to be nice to have the weeds off one way or the other, but I was interested in that. And also, I'm not sure just how the sidewalks would work if they were put in along there, but that is a terrible infestation of spotted knapweed between Poplar and the southern edge of the owner's property. And would a sidewalk take care of getting rid of that terrible infestation of weeds? That would be another question I would have. And finally, a question. Kyle told me that there was going to be a garbage can placed on Dodge Avenue, which is where our garbage cans are for UPS Little Caesar, so that the garbage trucks can pick them up. And would it be possible that the garbage can could be placed between the southern edge of the gate on the southwest corner that's being proposed and Poplar Street, so that it wouldn't impact from the north edge of the proposed gate up to our garbage cans, if they could be placed back further right by Poplar Street? And those were the questions that I would ask if you would direct those. And if I could just be given the gentleman's number, I could call and ask him myself these questions. But actually, overall, we're thrilled at this. Herzog, which was some sort of exact same thing, had a construction lot there within the past couple of years, and it worked out very well. We were thrilled when they were there, and we're looking forward to this.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to provide public comment? Okay. Is there anyone online?
If you are online and you'd like to provide public comment on this item, please raise your hand now. So we have a hand raised. If you would please state your first and last name along with your address before your comment.
Can you hear me?
If you're speaking right now, we can't hear you. You need to unmute your computer.
Go ahead. You are able to talk and you're unmuted. If you're having trouble with your microphone, you can put your comment into the Q&A and I can read it out to the commission.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yes, this is Mike Jokey. I'm at 191 South Hills Road. Thank you for your comments. I'm a commercial real estate broker and real estate appraiser in Helena. And obviously this property is located in one of Helena's original or older light industrial neighborhoods. This proposed use is certainly consistent with surrounding uses in this neighborhood, as the previous speaker in the room was just saying. This use has already been on this land in the past. So I think this proposed use would be a natural fit for this land and consistent throughout the neighborhood. That's really all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else online that would like to provide comments?
So the only other people we have online are city staff, zoning commissioner, and the applicant.
All right. Well, I guess we can open it up for discussion among the zoning commission. I guess if I could start with the questions that were posed by Mrs. Randash. Am I allowed to ask the applicant questions in this?
You are allowed to ask the applicant questions if you need clarification on anything during
Okay.
discussion. Yes.
Great. Mr. Isbell, are you still online and listening?
I am present, yes.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not sure if you were able to hear Mrs. Randash's questions, but one of them was related to access and whether ingress and egress for this contractor's yard would go over the property that they own with the US, well, the post office and Little Caesars.
Yes, thank you. No, it would not impede into the private property adjacent to this lot. It would be, all traffic would be constrained to Dodge Avenue, only in Poplar.
Okay. And the next question was about knapweed. Are there any, I guess, do you have any plans right now to mitigate the weeds on the property before you, well, once the application is approved, if it's approved?
Yeah, that is actually part of the proposed process. We're going to go through, get rid of all the weeds, kind of re-level and cap it, and bring it back to a nicely maintained gravel yard.
Okay. And then I think the last question was about the location of the garbage can being on Dodge Avenue and potentially moving it around to the Poplar side. Did you hear that question, and do you have an answer to that?
I was a little unclear, so yeah, I heard to some extent about the gate opening. I believe that to answer that question, the gate would be, kind of that southwest corner, so it would be fairly close to Poplar. I don't know if the garbage container provider may have some input as to where the location of the garbage can go. It's not something I can really speak to.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments from the city commission?
I'd just like to disclose, a colleague of mine will make a commission if this conditional use permit goes through, and I have nothing to gain, but just want to disclose that as April recommended.
Other comment? Now would be the time to make a motion, and if you make the motion, please read out the paragraph on the screen, and then we'll need a second.
Mark. Permit.
Could you start from the beginning so we capture it for the record?
Sorry about that. I'd move to recommend approval of a resolution granting conditional use permit to allow contractor yard use in the B2 zoning district for the property legally described as lots 9, 10, 11, and 12 in block 22 of the Grand Avenue addition to the city of Helena, Lewis and Clark County, Montana, as shown on the certificate of survey filed under document number 3004235.
I'll second.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Is there any comment on the motion prior to voting?
I would say I wish, I don't know, I hope that in the future development of this property, we could add that sidewalk. I don't think we're assertive enough with asking for that typically, not just with zoning, but in other areas of the city's bureaucracy, I suppose. But I do see the struggle doing that when a lot can change when you actually put a shop, which might change the layout of said sidewalk and curb. So I guess I just wanted to kind of put that out there.
Okay. Seeing no further comment, we can move into a vote. All of those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All right, the motion has passed. And this will also be heard, I'm assuming, at the same meeting in January and February for the city commission.
A conditional use permit only has to go before city commission once. So it is intended to be heard at the January 13th city commission meeting.
Okay. Thank you. So it will be heard at the January meeting of the city commission if you wish to provide comment at that meeting as well. Now we can open it up to general public comment about any issues before the zoning commission. Is there anyone who wishes to provide general public comment?
There are no hands raised online.
Okay, seeing none, we can move on to announcements and upcoming meetings. It looks like our next scheduled meeting of the zoning commission is Tuesday, January 14th.
That is correct. We may have an item. I'm not entirely certain. I believe it's another zone change related to the zone change you heard tonight. And just the other thing I will make a note to myself is to put election of a vice chair on the agenda. We may also need to do chair and vice chair just with the new year. So we'll get that teed up. And if that is the case, if not, we'll see you in February.
Okay. And I guess I skipped over it. Are there any proposals for the next agenda that would not be brought forward by city staff otherwise? Okay. Seeing none, I think we can just go ahead and adjourn, right?
We can if
Okay.
you want to adjourn.
I guess we're adjourned.